All right, thanks again for joining the first panel for the Undergraduate Careers Exploration Week. I'm so excited to have our panelists here today. Our third panelist is still missing, but hopefully he'll join. But let's welcome our two panelists who are here. But before we get started, I wanted to just first introduce myself for those of you that I haven't met before. My name is Jennifer Tasneem, and I'm the Career Services Coordinator here in the School of Chemical Sciences. And I'm going to be facilitating our conversation today. But my role here is just to be here in the background. This event is mainly for all of you, all of our students, to ask any questions to our panelists and ask anything about their careers, about this field. So just get started with those questions right away. So as I mentioned before, I am recording this session, and the recording for this session will be posted on our YouTube channel and also on the Media Space channel. So you'll see all the information about that next week. But if you want to ask questions, you can feel free to either unmute yourself or put your questions in the chat. Remember, this is a networking event, so I'm sure our alumni panelists would love to see you. So if you are at all comfortable, please turn on your cameras. That way they can see you and you can also ask questions to our alumni. Or if you're uncomfortable putting questions in the chat, you can also send it to me directly or use the reaction button in the bottom and raise your hand to ask questions. So that's all from my end. I'm going to turn it over to our alumni to introduce themselves. Maybe tell us a little bit about you. Tell us what major you were when you were here at Illinois, and a little bit about your current role and your current organizations. So Gabriella, since you're first on my screen, I'll have you start off our conversation tonight.
Sure. So hi everybody. My name is Gabriella, or Ella. I mostly go by Ella. But I recently graduated from U of I actually back in May of 2023. I currently work at EY or Ernst Young as a climate change and sustainability consultant. While I was at U of I was a chem major and I had a minor in sustainability, energy, and the environment fellows program. And yeah, should I talk a little bit about my role or do we want to wait for questions or?
Sure, you can talk a little bit about your role.
Well, essentially, like kind of based on my job title, I think you can kind of tell what I do. I'm a climate change and sustainability services consultant. So I work with different companies to work on kind of different kind of like project-based roles. Like I've been doing greenhouse gas accounting. There's also environmental health and safety, climate and sustainability, like project mapping, circular economy stuff, kind of depending on the type of engagement that you're put on. But I've been working at EY for like 6 months now, so I'm still pretty new. But yeah, it's a little about me.
All right, Abdul, you're up next.
Hi, everyone. I graduated from UIUC in 2017, and I studied chemical engineering at the college. Had a variety of roles since then, between some quality engineering, some process engineering, and a lot of environment, health, and safety, which was kind of my relationship to the sustainability and green space. But it was always in the private sector as well, just for individual corporations managing their compliance programs, their manufacturing programs. But I recently, last year in September, I started working at the US EPA. And I'd always wanted to kind of be on the other side of things, on the public side, because I felt like sometimes what I was doing wasn't enough, and I wanted to see what it was like working for a public agency. And I work in the enforcement arm of the US EPA, so I'll investigate companies to determine whether they're in compliance or not, perform inspections, and develop cases against them to formalize enforcement actions like penalties and violations, etc. My focus area is mostly pesticides and chemicals risk management for companies that store large amounts of chemicals, ensuring that they have the safety programs in place to prevent releases. Thank you.
All right, Mohammad, on to you.
Hi, I'm Mohammad Allauddin. I graduated back in 2018 I've been with Cargill since 2018 in a number of different roles in like the food safety quality space as a chemist, as a process chemist, and as a microbiologist for a department. And now I'm the operational supervisor for the ethanol and utilities department. We make ethanol primarily for biofuels. We're part of a big biorefinery here in Blair, Nebraska. And essentially, we support the green economy, if you will, by making a bunch of ethanol from corn. Fortunately, unfortunately, depends on your perspective. We make the lowest value product on site. It's more of a byproduct for our site compared to like other products that we might make, like plastic from corn or sugar alternatives like erythritol or anything like that. My role is mostly making sure everything gets done, all the priorities we can be executed, and living and working in a complex biorefinery is a lot of fun, just because a lot of things go wrong and you get to solve a lot of different problems and very different hats. So at any given day, I'll be wearing a supervisor hat or a microbiologist hat or like a process engineer or an environmental specialist or safety specialist kind of. So there's a lot going on and I'm always engaged and
Awesome. Thank you all for your intros. Appreciate your time being here. Now I'm going to turn it over to our students. So what questions do you have for our alumni who are here today? Let's see who wants to be brave and go first.
Hi, my name's Harley Shores. I have a question for Abdul. So my understanding is that you studied chemistry when you were a student here. And that your role in the EPA is probably more similar to policy. So how have you found that transition to be? And have you found that your background in STEM has been beneficial in that job?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I was doing chemical engineering in school, but you're right, a lot of the work experience that I had was less heavy on the engineering and science side of things and more related to what exactly you said, like policy and kind of environmental sustainability more broadly. Um, there's a lot of roles, especially in the private industry, where it really does help a lot to have the engineering and STEM background because you're working in like a manufacturing environment, you're working for a technical company that has very technical processes, and you have to kind of fit what they're doing within the realm of the policy or the environmental regulations that are out there. And so having that background really gave me a leg up to be able to, learn things much more quickly, to be able to adapt what the process is to the regulations, to just understand very easily kind of what's going on. Because a lot of these sustainability roles, they do have a pretty broad, they're open to folks from many different backgrounds, from environmental sustainability to policy to law. Depending on where you're at. And they aren't always necessarily looking for engineers, but it does help a whole lot. And then especially, I think now that I'm at the EPA, there's also so many different categories of roles. Some focus more on policy, some more on the technical side of things. And that always helps, whenever we go out to plants or manufacturing environments to do inspections, it's like, okay, I already know the process equipment, how it works, what's going on. And then it's just, again, connecting the dots between what they're doing and what the requirements are. So definitely helps a lot and gives you a leg up against over many other candidates, I believe.
Oh, I know that was, Han Tong, do you want to ask a question?
Yes, about I don't know, I just joined. I haven't heard I only heard one of the introduction you guys have. I don't know if you guys know anything about like the international student for the consideration range for the internship companies. Because what I'm looking for is for the summer, maybe do some public health or biostatistic internship positions. So I don't know. Do you guys have any advice for like
So I guess the question is, do you have any advice for international students who are looking for
Yeah.
opportunities in your organizations?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Cargill does not hire international students as of right now, as far as I know. But I know there's a lot of other companies, especially Cargill's competitors, that do go for that. So if you're looking for it, I'd say it decreases the scope of companies that you're looking into, but it makes it way easier because now you know there's only certain companies that you can go apply for.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add either. I think exactly as Mohammad was saying, like there's just certain companies that you really need to identify ahead of time who focus on those types of hires, and that'd be your best bet. But I'm not sure how exactly to identify them. I'm sure you can probably find some online or through some contacts. Graduated, but there definitely are a good amount that will hire and support.
Gabriella, do you have any insights about that from EY?
I know there, I don't think there's much more that I can add. I think I kind of just echo what these two said. I think just I'd maybe check on different places like LinkedIn, maybe people who like are international students that are working at companies that you are interested in, and you can reach out to them about the hiring process. I'm not too like privy on the EY like hiring statuses right now, but I'm sure there's plenty around. But
Thanks for that information. I see Isaac, you have your hand raised. What question do you have?
I have a question that's for anyone in the panel. My question was, how would you recommend the students spend their time outside of classes and assignments during college? Like, is there a recommended split for time being spent productively, or extra studying, or extracurriculars, and like leisure and such? Is there one you would recommend?
I think it's always like incredibly important to have like a healthy balance between like studies and like I guess like leisure. I think a helpful way in the way like I did it, I think a lot of my like extracurricular activities that I did like at U of I were partially like for pleasure, but they also were at the same time able to kind of like fill like certain like social like needs. I've always been super interested in like social justice and human rights. So I was like involved in different like activist organizations on campus. Obviously, we're in kind of a sustainability panel, so I was also able to kind of work on different like climate resilience teams as well as like different types of activities in that way where I'm able to kind of combine both. But I think it's important that you do make time for like yourself and pleasure. I don't think it's ever good to be too lost in schoolwork. Because once you start your job, I think you'll also realize like when 9 to 5 ends, like it's important to like have a work-life balance. And I think that's something that you can start building in college because you have to learn to close a computer at 5 sometimes. I think sometimes it's a hard thing to learn. And it's something that you can start definitely early on. But I wouldn't have any certain percentages for numbers, but I think whatever makes you not burn out is the way to go.
Thank you.
I'll add on to that and I'll say every person needs to figure that out for themselves, what that balance looks like between work and life, if you will. Um, it's uh, it is highly advantageous if you build those skills earlier on in your life rather than later on. Like right now, and I work in manufacturing and operations, right? We have a site shut down and I work like 14, maybe 15 hours for a whole consistent week, 7, 8 hours a day. So yeah, when push comes to shove, you know where you should have the skills should have the skills and the ability to be able to deliver in those stretches, but then also understand when you need to take a break, when you're burnt out, what can you do to be able to deal with that burnt out? Because that is pretty realistic in any given job, right? In operations, in sustainability, in consulting, it doesn't really matter. There will come a point where you will want to have those skills to be like say no, this is not my problem. My laptop is shut. I am not coming in tomorrow. I need the day off. And I will say that companies and senior managers have changed that mindset of no, you need to be here all day long every day to like you need to be here and be productive. So mindsets have changed and people do realize when you do need a day off, just make sure that you're communicating efficiently. But to add on to that, if you will, make sure you understand what that balance is. Like I can give you 80-20, somebody will give you 20-80. You need to figure that out for yourself and what that line is. But again, it's all experimentation and figuring out, oh, I just worked too long this week, or I had too much fun this week. I need to do this. So over time, you'll figure that out.
Yeah, those are some really good points by both you guys, Gabriella and Mohammad. The only thing that I'd maybe add is I know some folks sometimes get stressed out about like, oh, in what ways beyond school can I demonstrate my interest in whatever field it is, right? Maybe sustainability, green energy, engineering, and sometimes feel like that there's a pressure to be involved in more and more beyond their classwork. And while on one hand, that can be beneficial and can help you sometimes, it's not critical. Like I think what you demonstrate in your ability to excel in your classes and after you graduate, just in your jobs, like that's always going to be the most important thing when people are looking to recruit and hire folks. And your extracurriculars, even if they're not directly related to what you want to do career-wise, if you can just demonstrate that, hey, I'm passionate about something, I can advocate for people on any topic, right? I'm going to take the initiative to do more. That alone in any subject is going to take you a long way because you can translate those skills to wherever you're going.
Yeah, and to quickly piggyback off of that, I think that even in a job interview, like they ask you questions like, what are a time that you had this in teamwork or a time that you did this? And most of the time they're not asking you like technical questions about like, how did you fix this greenhouse gas accounting error in your group? It's more like, how did you tackle conflict? How did you learn to work in teams? And I think that any way you're able to gain that experience is helpful. And I think it's always good to like do things that you're interested in, even like that aren't like super related. If it's interesting to you, it is related because it's going to help you build your own skills and in turn that'll help you in your career.
Yeah, not to give some very generic advice, but be a well-rounded person, have a couple different interests that you're interested in. I know a lot of people who have like 10 different interests and know only a certain amount of that, and people who have two interests in something and they're just very knowledgeable about it. As I said, you need to figure out that balance for yourself.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, great advice. I see Maya has their hands raised. Do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, hi. This question is more for Abdul, but it's just more about what do you do for the EPA as a chemist? Like what are some of the jobs that you can get as a chemist for the EPA and sort of like the different roles you can take on with the
Yeah.
chemistry degree?
Yeah, absolutely. I was definitely shocked as I learned more and more about just the wide variety of roles that are out there. There's like almost 15,000 employees and so many different offices doing so many different things. And it honestly, there is kind of a role for almost every step of like the environmental life cycle, you can sort of say. So like on one hand, people might be in a lab analyzing the impacts of new chemicals that are being developed or introduced or that folks are trying to register for any reason, whether it's like a pesticide, a water treatment chemical, food additives, number of different things, right? So they can be in a lab testing chemicals. They can also be, looking at the data that's out there, right? Published studies that have been performed at other universities when the company might be trying to register a chemical for a new use. And looking at, hey, what are the potential impacts of this? What are the impacts if it gets released into the water, gets released into the air, and looking at any established science that's out there. They might be doing more similar work to what I do, right? Where they already have this understanding of like what the impacts are and what the industry is, and you're just like looking for companies that might be violating requirements in any way, like if they are exceeding their discharge limits, over polluting the water or the air, and kind of comparing what they should be doing versus what they shouldn't be doing. You could have a role in that type of environment. Just a lot of management roles, which I think people just like funnel up to from any direction. Just think about that for a second. And then I guess, I mean, another big chunk, of course, is just policy, right? So similar to like analyzing new chemicals, the regulations and rules really do lag behind what's going on in the industry. So, you know, as things get introduced to the environment and to the world, we're always trying to look ahead and see like, okay, how does this pose a risk that could get out of control, right? I think a big one right now is like PFAS. You hear a lot about, which particularly is talked about with like nonstick coatings, but it's also just like very like a chemical that's used in so many different industries. And we're just now implementing rules that start to limit their use in manufacturing and their emissions. And you know, it's a chemical that's been out there and studied and produced for almost like 50 or 60 years now, but we're only now getting to the bottom of like what we should do about it. And it kind of combines a little bit of all those roles that I described before, right? Having an understanding of like what it can do, and then you kind of think about like, okay, what are some appropriate limits? So I guess just to sum it up, you know, anything, it could be so many things from like bench work in a lab to field work. Actually, I didn't mention, like folks go out and perform take samples in the field, right, of soil, of water, of air. There's a lot of technicians who do that type of work as well. And yeah, so from like bench work to policy work to management to investigations, all sorts of things. Sorry, tough question because there's just so many different opportunities. But feel free to like follow up if there's more specific things that caught your interest.
So for those of you that joined a little bit late, feel free to either unmute yourself to ask questions or put your questions in the chat, or you can also send it to me privately through chat. What other questions do you have?
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm Matt. I have a question for everyone in the panel. I wanted to ask, what do you think is the most like meaningful part of your job for you, like during the day?
Great question.
I'll go first. The most meaningful part about my job is being able to solve different complex problems with a team of experts that involve like, hey, we have an environmental concern. We had an environmental release of ethanol product, and what do we need to do for reporting or for making sure that this never happens again? Do we need to do a root cause analysis? Or hey, we have some problem in our high hazard process, in our distillation process, right? What tools can we use? We can only use brass tools, right? What kind of troubleshooting do we need to get done? What kind of expertise do we need? So being able to work on complex problems with different types of people, I think that's kind of what is fulfilling for me.
Yeah, I think I really enjoy like the technical side of things too. I mean, I think it probably has to do with a lot of our backgrounds, right? And that we're really interested in like the heavy science and like just being able to like actually perform like a scientific analysis, get into the raw data of things, like think about chemicals involved and what they could do or what their impact is always really fun. And so those types of questions are always the most fun to answer when they come up. But at the same time, like, you know, I think this field inherently does provide a lot of satisfaction and fulfillment, right? Because, you know, we come into this wanting to do something better for the environment. And I think in all of our roles, we feel like we're at least helping to do that on a day-to-day basis. In the private industry, right? Like it's felt like, hey, this is the best we can do. for this environment, we're helping to minimize the impact or pollutions of a certain manufacturing plant. And even on the other side, right, sometimes, it feels like, hey, we're helping or forcing these companies do better every day, even though they may not appreciate it, but there are some bad actors out there that can be fun to feel like we make a change with.
Yeah, I'd say also on another note, I think for me personally, I think the most fulfilling part of my job is, as like corny as it sounds, it's like I love my coworkers. I like actually enjoy going into work, and I think like the nature of like going into sustainability, like I work at EY, it's a big four accounting firm, so you kind of have a wide range of backgrounds there, and within like our service line, we have like it's such an incredibly diverse like group of backgrounds that people come in with, and we all come in with like a similar goal and mindset. And I think that that's probably like the most fulfilling part for me. And I also like found out that I actually do get along with finance people. Who knew? I wouldn't have known, but I started at EY and found out that they're fine too. But I'd say, on kind of on that aspect, I think that's for me like one of the most fulfilling parts. But of course, like I think the nature of working in sustainability, there's a lot of fulfillment within the work we do. So
Awesome. Thanks all for sharing that. So next question was in the chat for everyone. Are internships important when aiming to enter the sustainability sector as a career? And what has I'm going to add on to that. What has your experience been with internships during your time at Illinois?
during my undergrad, I had one internship where I was like a research and development intern, where I was doing hair color formulation, which was really fun. I was able to make hair dye. But my specific internship, I'd say, wasn't like necessarily super like relevant to sustainability. But it was important in the sense where it gave me like an introduction to what a day-to-day and like the corporate life is, even though it was like very different. Obviously, it was like R&D in a lab. And then I was also like I also did like a capstone project for my minor, which was like super influential for me. But through that capstone project, I was also able to work with like a company and a consulting firm, which it was a whole semester long. So I consider that basically an internship. But I would say like in terms of like entering the sustainability sector, I think having any kind of internship experience is helpful. If it's related to sustainability, that will help you for sure, because it'll give you like technical experience that you can apply. But I think a lot of companies they always look for internship experience. So I think if you're able to do something and just kind of like learn different skills, it's always important to have like a diverse background of knowledge. And I think that's always helpful.
Yeah, just add on that I'm a huge proponent of internships. I think not only can they be a really fun experience, but like Gabriella said, it it really does give you an idea of like, hey, what's it like to work in this industry, in any industry, right? And I think it's a great opportunity to explore different industries and different things that you might be interested in before feeling like you have to commit to a job, right? Because sometimes once you're in a job, it can be hard to move on. You feel like, oh, I'm leaving so soon within a year, but this is like a designated 3 to 4 or 5 month period of time where you really do feel like you're almost as if you were like an entry level employee. Like some companies give you great projects to work on that can be challenging, that can be a lot of fun. It doesn't necessarily, I think, need to be sustainability related, just like she said, because even learning a lot about any industry is going to help you down the road, I think, in sustainability. And there's always ways that like always things that you're going to be exposed to that you can think about like, oh, how could this be better, how could this be improved, and you're just always thinking about like the impact that your process has on the environment. And if you can just keep that perspective in mind when you're doing anything technical, that's going to help you a lot.
Yeah, I think internships help quite a lot. It gives you a pretty good introduction into the corporate world. And as the others have said, it gives you an introduction into how to be a part of a bigger team and a bigger goal. And obviously, you're not going to be working on some great technical project. Nobody's going to put an intern on it, right? They might put you on a small part of it to say, hey, this is this big project that we're doing. We want you to make sure that this small part of it gets done. So it helps you realize that and work with experts. So in my internship with Cargill, I worked at their biorefinery in Eddyville, right? I worked on 3 small projects, validating an instrument for them, um, looking into research for a new method for like the Iowa Department of Natural Resources or whatever. And I worked on the bench, right? Gave me a quite a bit diverse experience on like research side, instrumentation side, and making sure that just bench work was good enough, right? So in that sense, it gives you a wide variety of opportunities to learn from different people. And I'm not really sure how other companies do it, at least, but um, at Cargill, we have like an intern forum as well. So you meet a lot of your peers. A lot of like new chemical engineers go into like the technical development program and they communicate with the people throughout the business unit. I know other companies do that as well, where you're keeping in touch with other young people who've entered your company as well. So yeah, internships definitely help. As I said earlier, it makes you a well-rounded individual. And that's kind of what most companies are looking for as well. One thing that I will echo as well is the fact that your first job doesn't have to be in sustainability. Your second job doesn't have to be in sustainability either, right? You can work your way there. If the end goal in, let's say, 5, 10, 15 years is to work in a career in sustainability or environmental roles, if you will, yes, you can get there by getting in the ground floor in a company that you're not really sure fulfills your overarching goals, right? You can find your path over time. So definitely focus on, if you're really interested in like environmental sustainability companies, definitely focus on that. But do not pigeonhole yourself into those roles, like saying, nope, I only want to go in sustainability, because that decreases the amount of options that you have.
Awesome, that's great advice. So, Gabriella, you mentioned you had an internship, maybe not as related to what you do now. Mohammad, you had an internship. What about Abdul? Did you have experiences with internships?
Yeah, I did a couple in college, and my first one actually, I mean, so I studied chemical engineering and I really wanted to have some internships in like the process engineering world, but my first one actually was EHS related, environment, health, and safety, at a manufacturing plant. And that really was my first introduction to this whole environmental space and health and safety space. And, had it not happened at the time, honestly, I don't know if I would be where I am today, because some of those managers and people that I worked with were people that I reconnected with after graduating, who kind of pulled me back into the environmental world. And I wanted to add that, like, um, a lot of these companies, if you already know very strongly like what you want to do and where you want to work, internships are a really good way to get your foot in the door, because a lot of companies use that as a pipeline to really hire their entry level folks from. It'll be the first pool that they kind of look at before going beyond and hiring folks externally. The other two I had were at LyondellBasell, and those were doing kind of process engineering, chemical engineering, around Texas. And again, those are really great experiences, because I got to really kind of learn what it means to be like a chemical engineer in the field and understand the processes and equipment and what's going on. But I was still able to, tie some of those experiences to sustainability and health and safety. And again, to echo their points, right, it could be almost anything that just gets you understanding what day-to-day work life is like, what it means to be a scientist or an engineer in the industry, and you understand like how to work with other people and how to collaborate. So very valuable. Research is also great as well, but for different reasons. I didn't have too much research experience, and there's part of me that wishes I did, but things worked out.
Awesome, sounds good. All right, do we have any other questions, or what other questions from our students? Go ahead, Isaac.
Um, I know that internships are very important. Is there anything you would say that is like equally as important, or like you would recommend students doing if they can't get an internship?
So as far as I could understand, you mentioned if you didn't manage to obtain an internship, are there other experiences that could be relevant as well? Did I get that right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I think, I think on one hand, never feel scared to kind of broaden the scope of what you're looking for. Because even companies that, may not be in manufacturing or producing products, they'll still potentially have people doing kind of environmental work, or advocacy work or policy work, which can sometimes be easier to get because there aren't folks, so especially with a STEM background, who are going out and looking for it. But also, it's a great opportunity to kind of work on projects outside of a job, right? If you're in an RSO in the university and they've got some summer programs going on, you can hone in on some of those. And that's always experience that you can still talk about, right? If you're doing technical work, if you're performing analytical work, um, and you can demonstrate that, you made a good effort, like that's still going to go a long way into demonstrating your skills. I'll think about this a little bit more, but Gabriella, Mohammad, anything?
Yeah, I think there's especially like when you're at like the university, there's so many opportunities for you. Like Abdul like mentioned before, like there's a bunch of research you could do. When I kind of like realized I wanted to kind of pivot to like a more sustainability, climate change related role, I like looked into, research that I could do within like environmental engineering labs. And I was able to like help work on like an LCA for a semester. And it was like that type of experience, something that you can get a lot, easier since you're like at the university. So I would look into stuff like that. I'd also like if we're going like specifically like sustainability related, like obviously there's like the Institute for Sustainability and like IC. IC has a ton of stuff. I was part of a like resilience SWAT team, which basically like leveraged. It was like a team of people from the university and then Champaign and like officials slash representatives from like Champaign and Urbana to kind of like leverage university resources to address like climate resilience. And like there's opportunities like that like all over campus. So if you're interested in like that type of thing, I would look into like different RSOs, different programs within schools, and I think they're just as valuable as internships half the time. I mean, when I'm within my job, I think it's like those experiences are I think some of the most valuable for me, even over like technical things because a lot of the stuff that you learn is kind of on the job. So when you're learning to work in teams and learning to like leverage tools and that kind of thing, that's like something you can easily find at the university, but that's probably what I would focus on.
I would say any kind of work that you do, it teaches you different skills that you can use later on in your life. Um, when I was at Illinois, I was only there for 3 years. But during that time, I was a tutor for the America Reads program, basically going off campus to a elementary school and teaching anywhere between kindergartners and fifth graders, right? Um, Experience like that taught me how to deal with difficult individuals, let's call them that, and making sure that I could work through conflict and make sure that we got to the same goals that we wanted to. And I was also a campus tour guide. And having more of an international student background, I grew up in Pakistan and I came here for university. I wasn't really good at conversing in English, and I wasn't that extroverted at that time either. So that job or role basically helped me come out of my shell, learn to speak English fluently, learn to understand what people's backgrounds and interests are. When you meet a ton of different people, you learn a lot. It gives you a lot of exposure. I would say those experiences have built me into where I'm at right now. So yes, there are specific experiences that you can go towards to learn different skills. And if you, as a college student, have those in mind of like, I really want to do this one thing, you can back calculate that and say, hey, these are the skills I need to be able to be successful in something like that. And that's what you can go after. But I would say any and all experiences in life teaches you lessons that you can implement within your professional career. So don't take anything lightly. And if somebody has an internship at, I don't know, Google, and you're just some guy working at the coffee place, you might have two very different opinions on life, and your opinion might take precedent over the other person because you've just seen a diverse a quantity of individuals, if you will.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, definitely don't feel stressed if you can't find exactly what you're looking for. I mean, my first summer, I worked at a summer camp as like a camp counselor for kids, and you know, you'll get there eventually, right? Just continue developing yourself and your professional experience, and just keep applying, keep networking. Networking is really important, and getting your name out there, showing that you're passionate, and you'll get into the right role.
Yeah, great advice. And speaking of networking, this is a networking session, so hopefully you're able to make those connections from today's session too. And as you mentioned, I also wanted to echo that any experience that you have, whether that's a part-time job, whether that's working as a tour guide, whether that's working at the Starbucks on campus, a lot of the skills you're going to be learning are going to be transferable to whatever job that you have at the end. So it also depends on how you're able to sell your skills and sell yourself during the interview. So really focus on the transferable skills that you learned. But besides your part-time jobs, look into experiences that would be relevant. So there's tons of research institutions on institutes on campus, as Ella mentioned, the IC. There's also the ISTC, but a ton of others that you could also look into that have a lot of part-time positions also available for students. So that was my 2 cents.
I really want to harp on that point of you need to be able to sell your skills. If you don't have any skills, you need to have that one skill that you need to be able to sell your skill or sell yourself. I see a lot of that within some of the recruiting and interviews that we do on our end in Cargill. A lot of the newer folks, and I do not mean to be a boomer talking to younger kids of like, hey, you need to be able to sell yourself, but it's extremely important that you're confident, being confident, talking to other people and selling yourself, and like your experiences, make sure you can let people know, hey, I have a unique experience, I have a unique skill set, and you want me than this other person, if you will.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
Hello, I have another question. It's Matt.
Sure,
Um,
go ahead.
yeah, I wanted to ask, piggying back off the networking talk, I wanted to ask what was like the most important network experience that you had in your undergrad years that probably like I don't want to say that got you the job, but you know that led you towards the job, I guess.
Yeah, I I think you know, when I was in college, I remember those career fairs, right? And they're very intimidating to be able to just like walk into that room with a bunch of recruiters and people who are like, tell me about yourself, right? And um, the stress of like prepping for it, I never did well at them, to be completely honest, right? And always felt like, oh, I'm too shy to talk to people or too shy to like get my name out there. And I just want to really encourage you to do so, however, right? Because you're not going to make a fool of yourself if you don't make the perfect impression. Like, you don't need to worry about like being remembered or anything like that. But at the same time, like, it is a really, really good opportunity to get yourself and your face and your name right in front of these recruiters who are going to be making that final decision. And just like Mohammad said, right, like, all you really need to be able to do is like speak confidently about yourself, what you can do, what you're capable of, and your passion. I think more than anything, sometimes confidence can go the wrong way. But if you can just demonstrate that, hey, I'm very, very passionate about this and I'm willing to learn whatever it takes to be effective in your environment, people will take that very well, and at least potentially like give you an opportunity to interview and learn more about yourself. But people really do remember those faces and names that they see at these types of events, right? If somebody is bright, stands out, it's going to be like, oh, I remember this when they're looking at the stack of interviews, like this person who talked to me. And it's just a great way to start that conversation. Isn't as intimidating as it can be, but the more you can just push yourself to do it, I think the better. Especially like if you're in RSOs, I think is actually an even better opportunity, and they have events where they have somebody during the career recruiting times that come out and talk to your group. I think that's an even better opportunity because they're there for the purpose of recruiting, and not only can you just like demonstrate that you're passionate, but you're also connected to them in one way because they obviously care about the RSO to be able to speak to the group on that topic, and then you're there as well, and so they'll connect you as like, oh, you're part of this group that I was also a part of, and I found you there, so. And I'm thinking like AICI, of course. I was also in AX, the professional fraternity, so that's also a good one.
Yeah, great advice. Anyone else want to add anything, or? All right, we'll move on to the next question again from Maya.
Hi, it was more a question for Gabriella. Just I was wondering more about the minor you did and the project you did for it.
Yeah, so I did, my minor was called Sustainability, Energy, and the Environment Fellows Program. Fellows Program is part of the name. It was a really long minor name. But it's within IC. My minor, okay, so basically I'm trying to see like where to start here. So the minor obviously tackles like sustainability, energy, and the environment. I picked it up like around my sophomore year, I think second semester of my sophomore year, and I had like kind of no trouble finishing it. Not that it was like easy, but it was just like it was doable. And I was able to learn like life cycle assessment. Basically, you have to take kind of like technical classes related to like sustainability as well as like policy based. So I took a class on like CSRD, which is like kind of like sustainability, like corporate sustainability, which is really cool. It's like a communications class. And then to like one of the required classes for the minor is the capstone project that you do. So you take it your senior year, or you could take it your junior year, I guess. But it's like it's only offered for one semester every year. But the advisor, his name is Eric Green. He's super, super sweet. The minor isn't very big, so he might remember me. And it's growing. It's like rapidly growing. So I hope it's bigger than it was even last year when I was in it. But I think there was like 73 people total in the minor or something like that, and that was like the biggest that it had been. But Eric basically connects with a bunch of different companies to offer like sustainability based projects, and then you are put into a small group and you work with a company directly. And so a lot of them, it was super diverse types of projects. So there was projects that were working like in the field, like they were like, working within some kind of, I don't know, cornfield. I'm not remembering the specific ones. There was ones that were for like Busey Bank, that were related to like sustainability related things. I was working with Accenture, which is like a big like IT consulting firm. And we were able to work on a like water resilience project for a semester to help them with their water resiliency. And that was like genuinely like what introduced me to the fact that companies like Accenture have a sustainability team. Like I didn't, I wasn't familiar with that. That wasn't something that I knew. Like because I wasn't as good at attending stuff like this, like you guys are, which good on you. Let's keep doing that. But like I would say that project, I was able to, you working directly with the team. And each project is different. And then at the end of the semester, you present to the class as well as presenting to like certain stakeholders of the company, depending on what the project is. But yeah, I would actually highly recommend the minor. I would say it was like really pivotal for me in my career. And Eric is like, he's like super great. He was definitely like a advisor to me. So yeah, I'd look into that program if you're interested.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you. Yeah, that sounds really interesting.
Cool. We have only just a little under 10 minutes for our hour tonight. What other last minute questions do you all have? Or maybe I'll ask the alumni, what advice would you have for our current students who are interested in working in the sustainability, environmental space, and green energy space? I do often find that a lot of students who are interested in these areas tend to find it a little bit difficulty in terms of finding jobs, mainly because the field is a little bit on the newer side, I suppose. So there aren't a ton of companies posting positions actively online. So what advice would you have regarding that?
Yeah, I guess one thing I'll say on that topic is that there's definitely a very wide spectrum of like job titles where you could be involved in something sustainability or environmental related. I think some of the obvious ones can be more technical, where, but then some that may not be, might be, I think EHS is a really good catch-all that almost every single company has, but there's a lot of variety in those types of roles as well. So just be careful that you understand what the role requirements are before getting into it, because some can be like completely focused on health and safety and only do like OSHA work and incident and post-accident reporting, whereas some will be very heavy on the environmental side of things, and maybe not do so much like health and safety. But then there's also just like titles with sustainability in them. There's titles that might say climate, that might say like, that might be even related to data science if it's at a corporate level and they're working on like compiling information from other locations. Environmental engineer, environmental analyst. And it's definitely growing every day, I think. Like to Gabriella's point, more and more companies, like in consulting, even have pretty large like sustainability teams these days and EHS roles. And then I guess also just to echo what Mohammad was saying earlier, almost any technical role that you get into, you will be able to kind of, if you're just thinking about the sustainability impact and the environmental impact of what you're doing, it's going to, one, allow you to potentially, take on projects or make a change or a certain initiative in that role. And that can kind of go beyond the scope of your role, but it also will show to future employers that, hey, even though I wasn't working on this sustainability piece specifically, I did really keep in mind like what the impact of what my role was. And these are ways that I work to minimize it, even if it wasn't like part of your job duties. But you understand like the impact and how it's related.
I would say in my current role, I have a lot of EHS exposure, if you will. Like a couple months ago, we were changing out a yeast strain to make ethanol, and there was a big environmental question of, hey, are we going to be within our environmental parameters or not? We can't just release this into the environment and it'll be fine. Of course, you can't do that as a company, right? So I worked on the environmental calculations of, this is what our permit says. This is only allowable, making sure we got lab data to support that. If we put this into the plant, this is what it would be. Then we did engineering testing and compliance to be able to figure out that this actually got done or not. I think just at my side, we had 2 environmental engineer roles open. They're more focused on, okay, so stormwater drainage into the Missouri River, if you will, or making sure all the chemicals on site are being disposed of in a correct manner, or making sure that any off gases that are going out from processes or any material released from different processes are being captured or taken care of in an environmentally responsible way. So yeah, your role, it might not exactly be something that you want within the EHS or sustainability side of things, but it will contain that aspect of it. And for future employers in a couple years, you can shine a light on those skills to say, hey, I did this and I learned this. This is why I wanted to do thing X or thing Y or thing Z, if you will. And yeah, the field's quite new in the sense that there's a lot of companies just getting into it. So if you are interested in this stage of this field, it only bodes well for you. And to echo Gabriella's point from earlier, the fact that you're coming to career advising services and attending events like this, you're way ahead of people like myself, because I was like, we'll figure it out. So yeah, in that sense, you're way ahead of that curve, if you will, right? So again, don't stress about jobs or don't stress about the fact that you don't really know what you're doing. It's okay to have that mindset right now, right? I'm gonna harp on this fact again, but if you want to go into the EHS or sustainability side of things, it doesn't have to be right away. You can get another technical role in another company and figure out your way of where you would like to be at eventually. That would be my biggest point of advice.
Yeah, I'll say like at EY, like coming in like freshly as like a chem major into like kind of the corporate sphere, I think is actually not as common as people who have like worked within like EHS for a few years and then they transitioned into becoming a consultant. So that's like a really common way that people kind of like dip their toes into that type of thing. And then within my service line, they offer like a lot of different types of sustainability services. So EHS is like one of our like tagged subservice lines. So that's like something like a way that you could, I mean, obviously that's like specifically EY, but like just as an example, like you could easily work within the industry for a few years and then transition into different types of roles. And no matter what you do, like you can always leverage skills that you learned in whatever way. As long as you know, if you have a goal in mind, I think you can get there. You can take this way or all around, you know, it'll all work out.
All right, we are pretty much at time. I know we could go on about this conversation for a longer time, but unfortunately, we only have the hour today. Once again, I want to thank all our panelists today for being here, for being so generous with their time, their insights, their advice. Here's a virtual round of applause for all of you for being here. And to our students, thank you for attending and for being so engaged with all your wonderful questions. I hope to see students tomorrow at our next panel on careers in the oil and gas and energy industry. So again, come prepared with your questions. And as I mentioned before during the start of the event, this session was recorded and I will be posting this video to our SES YouTube channel and on the Media Space channel as well. So yeah, with that, thank you again to our panelists and for our attendees and students for being here. I hope you all have a great night.